Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to NIMA's webinar. We're just starting. We'll give a couple of minutes for people to join, and in the meantime, I will hand over to your meeting chair, NIMA Vice Chair Rachel Heaton.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to joining us for this lively discussion, which I'm sure will be this afternoon, the day after bank holiday. So hopefully you're all ready to take in some information, which hopefully will support you moving forward. The road to circular economy and why digital product passports will be important. Today we have Amanda Long joining us, Chief Executive of CCPI. He's going to give us some insights. So I'll hand over to Amanda in a minute. And Janet Lynch from Arup, who will also be giving us a bit of an overview. So firstly, I'm just going to ask Amanda just to kind of introduce herself. Amanda, can you just give us a bit of an introduction about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Rachel, for having me on the call. I'm really excited to be here and have a chance to talk about this with everyone. My background in relation to this sort of comes in a couple of halves, really, or even thirds, Rachel. I'll surprise you with some of this because you don't know some of it. So 1/3 of it is way back in the olden days when I was earlier in my career. My life was all around being head of corporate responsibility at places like Unilever and Anglian Water. So getting businesses to understand and think about sustainability, even in the early days of the debate, was something I was really passionate about. The next bit of my career moved into consumers and consumer information and, of course, consumer labelling. And so again, there's a sort of interesting little thread there in my career path that leads me to be sitting here and very enthusiastic about what we're talking about, which is about making sure the consumer can make informed purchasing decisions. And then the final bit is my current world over the last few years, which has been working with the construction sector and particularly construction product manufacturers about managing their product information and getting their product information and their data into shape to be able to be part of what is required going forward in terms of labelling and information provided. So there's 3 whole chunks of my life that take me right the way through my career that happily land me sitting in front of you, Rachel, today and next to Janet to talk about this.
Well, that's great. But the other thing that unfortunately I forgot to tell you is that I haven't mentioned that we're going to record this session. So you're going to have to tell me probably about that next time we do meet again.
All right, then I'll do that.
So that's fine. So we will be recording this session today, and we will be sharing the slides that Amanda and Janet are going to be presenting. So what we're going to do on this kind of structure is Janet's going to introduce herself shortly. And then Amanda's going to give a bit more of an overview about what she's just mentioned there around the code of construction product information, and then talk a little bit more around how that sits in with the digital product passport. And then Janet's going to follow on and talk more around this circularity aspect and what Arup's been doing, and then really a bit of an overview of how that ties back into the digital product passport. Then we're going to have some questions really surrounding that, and then that's where we'll open up the floor for questions from yourselves. So please do add that into the Q&A or into the chat area. There was a technical problem with Teams recently we've discovered. So sometimes it accepts it on chat, sometimes it accepts it on Q&A. It just depends on how your Microsoft's been collated throughout your business. So Janet, sorry to interrupt there. Could you just give me a little bit of an overview and a background to yourself? That would be great for everybody.
Thanks so much, Rachel and Amanda, and it's lovely to be here. So I'm the European Circular Economy Skills Leader in Arup, and I started my career quite a while ago in Arup London, working on amazing projects that I loved, like the London 2012 Olympics and Crossrail. And I worked on recycling of construction material, but the same theme came up again and again. To enable the reuse of materials, to reduce their carbon impact, to add value to them, we needed to consider design. we needed to consider the data that we had about the materials and about the assets and about the components. So this led me to change my career, and I'm from a civil engineering, a transportation background. So I upskilled myself I attended courses in the University of Exeter on circular economy. I've undertaken a postgraduate diploma in innovation. And the whole time, the principle of circularity that we're trying to implement is to design for circularity. Share the data about the components in the built environment and the assets throughout its life cycle with all of the stakeholders, and thereby adding value to the components and the buildings and our transport networks, and sharing that value. So I'm delighted to be here today.
Okay, thank you. I'm also just conscious that I haven't really introduced myself properly. So, Paul, thank you for my introduction. My name is Rachel Heaton. I'm Vice Chair for nima, but also my other hat, I also work in construction engagement for GS1 UK, focusing around unique identification, which does tie slightly into this conversation here today. So I've also got a few questions that I would like to know from both of you. So looking forward to asking those later. Amanda, did you want to just give us a bit more of an overview around the Code of Construction Product Information, a bit of your thoughts around where we are at the moment?
Oh, I will, Rachel. Is it all right if I pull up a couple of slides?
Of course, yeah, please do.
Hopefully you can see that. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm just going to put it on. Okay.
Perfect.
So hopefully that's on reel. So you're seeing it running as a slide reel. So right, I think one of the things just for everyone might be stating the obvious for everyone on the call, but just to be very clear that we're all got the same thing in mind when we're thinking about what is a digital product passport. It's fundamentally it's a dynamic digital record. That's what it is, and it's about providing that comprehensive information about the product throughout its life cycle. That's why you want it to be dynamic, and it's looking to include, or typically to include, details right from the product's origin and its composition through its manufacturing process, its sustainability attributes, its usage instructions, and the end-of-life disposal options. DPPs are going to require digital technologies such as QR codes, so the sort of GTINs that GS1 has, that Rachel works on, so that the information can be shared securely and in packages and transparently. My interest is twofold. As I said, there's the point that they are a tool for the consumer, the user, to be able to make informed purchasing decisions. But it's also a tool for businesses to demonstrate product transparency and sustainability, and conformance or compliance. So it's a really interesting piece that has sort of come into play as a requirement for product manufacturers. And what it does, I think it's fair to say, is really put product information management and the provision of product information, so the marketing as well, sort of in the frame for manufacturers and suppliers to really be putting central in their thoughts and skilling up so that they can actually deliver this. And actually, it dovetails really well and directly with why the Code for Construction, Code for Construction Product Information, CCPI, ever came into sort of being, because we exist, CCPI exists really as a response to Dame Judith Hackett's review, the Building a Safer Future review that came out post Grenfell. And in that, Dame Judith was raising issues in relation to product safety and product information, how product safety and product information, the relationship that they have with each other, and the behaviours of manufacturers not prioritising product information, not managing that information right the way through the life cycle of the product, and the user not necessarily having the information that they need. So you get this scenario where with DPPs coming into play and into requirement, particularly for manufacturers who want to be able to trade in Europe after 2028, actually it dovetails with the building safety agenda as well. And if you think about the recent government green paper relating to the regulation of construction products and the Building Safety Act, and as I say, the Hackett review, and then also some of the other reviews and reports that came out there, they also were calling for and are calling for clear, accurate, accessible, up-to-date and unambiguous product information and marketing. So they start to dovetail with this whole new focus for manufacturers to really be thinking about how we manage our product information, how we prioritize it, how we make sure our data is up to date and kept up to date and is accurate. And in fact, if you have a look at that green paper, you'll see very clearly at point 6.41 there is a very clear call by the government for industry to adopt CCPI. There's a lot of value in that. Not just in relation to the building safety agenda, but actually because of how it starts to dovetail with the circular economy piece and digital product passports. When we were developed, the Code of Construction Product Information, we were actually developed as a consequence of really substantial industry consultation following Dame Judith Hackett's review. And our aim is really about helping to build trust and confidence in product information and actually to help manufacturers upskill at this and ultimately get to the place where product information meets those sort of acid tests that I've been describing of clear, accurate, accessible, up-to-date and unambiguous, and give that greater confidence in product information. And when at CCPI we are looking at the claims that are made around products, we're not just looking at the safety claims or safety performance claims or flood or acoustics. Actually, we're also looking at environmental claims and sustainability claims. So what you find is that by engaging with CCPI, it really helps with the preparedness for digital product passports and what you're going to be asked to do to be able to get this in place going forward. So there is a sort of positive happen chance that has occurred between the building safety agenda and the sustainability and circular economy piece that they've sort of been running in parallel, and now we're starting to really see them converge with this discussion around readiness for digital product passports. And I've just put up there fairly quickly, Rachel, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but these are the sort of 11 clauses of the Code for Construction Product Information. And there are all the things in there that I just talked about a passport needs. If you're going through CCPI, we will want information about the manufacturing process, the composition, the usage instructions. We want the end of life and disposal options. As we go, we are trying to encourage manufacturers to engage more and more with digitization and with QR codes, with unique identifiers, particularly like the identifiers you see through barcodes and GTINs. Because we want to see the industry sort of moving in that direction. Ultimately, it's going to be helpful to you all. And ultimately, what CCPI does is help you get ready for that product information transparency that is being required. When you do CCPI, you have to go through a robust assessment process, but it adds real value for you as manufacturers and suppliers. We've had very good feedback where we've asked some of the manufacturers that we've already worked with. We went out to all of those that had been through assessment and got product sets assessed and in the marketplace. We've looked at their product information and corroborated that back to the standard of the code. And it's always a dangerous thing when you ask a question you really don't know the answer. But we ask them, does this does this help you with your system and process, getting in place the management system and process that you need to be able to effectively manage product information, be confident in the data that you're managing? And we were getting 97% of responses coming back saying we agree, or we strongly agree with that statement, that it does help us with that. And again, when we asked them about, does this help you with staff engagement and creating the right culture and behaviours? Because I think that's some of what worries me about the digital product passports need that's sort of moving quite fast across the horizon towards us all, that actually just manufacturers will have hurdles in terms of it just not being the skill set and the behaviours, let alone the system and process in place to be able to manage that product information effectively and have the data in place in a way that it can be shared transparently through the DPP process. So CCPI is really there to help you with all of that, and I'd really urge you all to engage with our webs. Come onto our website, come to some of our webinars, register with us. We work with manufacturers. It doesn't matter how large or small you are. We are trying to take you on a journey, and we know different manufacturers will be in different places. And what we're trying to do is help you be to a common standard and then be working towards where you need to go, which ultimately will support what you've got to do with DPPs. And there are some very valuable parts of our system and process, like the leadership and culture piece. So that really helps you understand the behaviours that you've got in your organisation and sort of areas that you can work on, like the management system questionnaire, again, looking at your system and process. And then you also get the benefit of having your product information for particular products, already having us look at the claims that you're making, look at the environmental information that you're providing, and look at the other claims that you're making, and helping you get the right data and information behind that to be able to be transparent about your claims. And ultimately, of course, right now, it increasingly supports what clients and contractors and users and specifiers are all needing in terms of having greater confidence in product information, which as I say, the building safety piece actually dovetails very well at this point with the sustainability and the circular economy piece. And just to my last slide, Rachel, before I hand back to you, as I was just saying, I think that the introduction of digital product passports and that journey to a circular economy will present some hurdles for companies. So what we're trying to do at CCPI is really help with that readiness and the right behaviours. If you're developing and you're going to be applying to have a digital product passport, your data is going to need to be correct. It's going to be need to be interoperable. It's going to need a unique identifier, and it's going to need system and process and behaviours behind it to be able to support all that, or shape all that, and serve all that up and keep it up to date. And so that is what we're here to help with. I think that the industry has got some way to go before it will be comfortably ready with the digital product passport system. And I mean, the jury's out on an awful lot of it. They're still trying to make decisions as to how they'll actually get the information from the manufacturer onto the registry. And they're still working through their legislative timeframe, which started sometime in 2024 and apparently takes us to 2028, when the obligation to deliver the passport is expected to come into force. Of course, that's a bit of a moving feast, Rachel, and it could change. But my sort of pitch on this webinar that I hope I can bring to the story is, I see fairly closely at the moment the limitations of manufacturers' abilities to effectively manage information and data. And I have a system here that is here to help them get that in place. So my appeal is, come and work with us and let it help you help yourselves. I think I can pause there.
Okay, perfect. Right, Amanda, a lot of information and really great information. Thank you very much. Just picking up on a couple of things just before we move over to Janet. There were some really key elements in there, really around the whole kind of data structure. So we can certainly see what the CCPI is trying to do, and I can certainly understand why that's going to help support the journey for the digital product passport, or for manufacturers as a whole, which is really what we wanted to kind of focus on, and that built-in digital environment here today. Key bits back to the circular economy is about that reuse end of life for those products, and how are we doing that as part of it, which Janet can hopefully just discuss a bit more. So just on some of your slides there, you mentioned around the construction product reform paper, and I think worth pausing and just making a note on, there was a question within that which is focused around digital labelling and EU product passports and what's it going to bring. I think we'll touch on that after we've heard more from Janet, because then it can kind of open a bit more conversation. We have had one question that's already just come in, so worth just kind of making note on that at the moment, and that is who's responsible for updating the digital product passport throughout the life cycle. So do we have a confirmed answer on that?
Yeah. The key question there is confirmed, or the key point in it, the key word in your statement is confirmed. The expectation, as I understand it, is always going to be on the manufacturer to ensure that the product information is up to date, and that is why that is why what starts with the digital product passport and the manufacturer getting right is going to be key. As the product then moves on into situ and into buildings, my understanding is it will the passport will pass as the product is passed on. So it will be the owner of the passport who will have to update that. But perhaps I'm wrong about that, and perhaps that will change, and they will expect it to come back to the manufacturer. I don't think so. I think it will be that the passport will move as the product moves, and the owner will be expected to keep the digital product information up to date. Rachel, I don't know if you have more on that.
Well, I'm going to actually hand over to Janet now, who's going to give us a bit more of an understanding around kind of our Penella circular economy. We'll come back to this in a bit more detail in a minute, but I think at the moment we've part answered that, I think, and I think for the moment that's accurate as far as I'm aware as well. And the manufacturer, that's the owner of that product and that information, they should be responsible for that. So Janet, I'll hand over to you if that's okay.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Can you hear me and can you see my slides?
Absolutely.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you.
So if the reception goes, just let me know and we'll put a backup in place as we discussed. So thanks so much for having me here today. So I'm the Circular Economy Skills Leader in Arup Europe, and I'm going to talk a little bit about circular economy at Arup, and then a group that I'm a member of, which is the European Standards for Circular Economy in the construction sector, with the value added by the sharing of data in the supply chain, and then some case study projects that show the importance of sharing of data. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Arup, as a firm, our purpose is to shape a better world. And then through the work we do, we create safe, resilient and regenerative places that enable current and future generations to thrive. So, set up in London in 1946, we're a global firm. We currently have 18,000 members and 150 disciplines. So we share and generate a lot of data. Our markets and services spread from energy and water to industry, technology and cities. And there is an example of some of the services that we provide, including planning, advisory, and climate and sustainability. And I'm a member of the Climate and Sustainability Service within Arup. Our sustainability strategy is called A Better Way, and it's based on 6 pillars. These pillars are a framework for action, and one of the principles within the framework is adoption of circular economy principles, leading to decoupling of economic growth and consumption. So as a firm, we're mandated to implement circular economy in our projects. What we're looking to do is depicted in the bottom left-hand side there. It's to move from a position of ecological loss because of perhaps built environment activities, to move beyond sustainability, to move to a regenerative built environment where there's ecological gain, and circular economy plays a crucial part in this. Our approach to circular economy is aligned with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We're partners with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the thought leaders in circular economy, since 2016. We're aiming to eliminate waste and pollution along the life cycle of our assets and materials and products, circulate those products and materials, and regenerate nature. An example of the different stakeholders throughout the life cycle of a product that would need data is shown on the screen. Our products are manufactured, they are made up of parts, they're placed in our buildings or in our roads or bridges, and then traditionally landfilled or disposed of and the values lost, or recycled, which is very high carbon intensity. Addition of data, barcodes, QR codes about the material present and the supplier that produced it, and sharing that data forward and backwards through the supply chain adds value to that component and means that it can be reused. So your new market players now are a reuse and recovery industry. So we're looking to take a systems thinking approach. To enable decarbonisation and circular economy, data would need to be shared along every part of the system. Designers, constructors, suppliers, and portfolio and asset owners must have ready access to data. So what are the European Union and standards agencies doing about this? So I'm based in Dublin and I work with NSAI, the National Standards Authority of Ireland, in addition to ARP. So I represent ARP on the committee Circular Economy in the Construction Sector. So for those of you in the UK, BSI are extremely active in this committee as well. And your participation is led by Gilly Hobbs and Kate Jackson of ARP. The committee is on a 3-year programme to publish a range of standards enabling circularity across the construction sector. And at the moment, there are 8 working groups operating. So these are shown on the screen. I'm a member of Working Group 7, Circular Design for the Construction Sector, and we're producing a horizontal guideline for designing buildings with circularity in mind. The activity of every single one of these working groups relies on the data that's available to enable the circularity along the life cycle of each asset. The European Union has the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation that we discussed a moment ago, and it just published last month, obviously, its working plan for the introduction of DPP in the coming years. So different products will have different requirements, obviously, in their DPP. And what's shown on the screen is the broad menu of what might be included in the DPP for each product. Improving durability, reusability, upgradability, and repairability. So data on design lives and service lives would be an example. Improving the possibility of maintenance and refurbishment. Energy efficiency and resource efficiency of products. Presence of substances inhibiting circularity. Recycled content is a big one. Remanufacturing and recycling data. Carbon and environmental footprints, and this will change the face of construction in the coming 5 years. So this is huge. So hopefully this will all be aligned with the data that's currently contained in EPDs. Limiting generation of waste, and then improving sustainability information on products. So an example of 3 projects that we've undertaken that really underline the importance of data and digital product passports is shown on the screen. I'll start with one that isn't on the screen, which is in 2017, we designed our first circular building. And it was placed in London as part of London Design Week. We were extremely proud of this, and it was developed in conjunction with a number of partners and included QR codes on every component within the building. This allowed information on the material and the supplier to be identified readily, and each of the components within the circular building to be reused. Following on from this, British Land looked to redevelop their headquarters, and their first proposal looked at demolition. So we met with British Land and said, well, we don't think you should demolish this building. We think you should look at reusing it. So luckily, we had the data on the original building, built in the 1990s. Arup designed it to hand. So we could see who supplied each of the components within the building. And this gave us a unique perspective. The facade could be returned to the supplier, inspected, tested, cleaned, and reused. A new design was formulated where the existing building was reused. It was raised. The facades were reused, and a 43% cost reduction resulted just from having the supplier data and the data about the original building to hand. So it was a little bit old school though. So this is a little bit before digital product passports, the 1990s. One of our innovations we're working on at the moment is shown in the centre in Essen in Germany. We've developed a modular circular building in partnership with Future 2K. The buildings use open use floor plans, and they offer maximum flexibility. You can buy building modules or components, or you can pay for their use in the future. The data about each of these components is stored and enables the reuse of the component in the future. An example of advanced use of BIM and 3D BIM is the Here East project that you'll be familiar with if you're in London. So this is in Hackney. It's an innovation and technology campus, fantastic development. Arup worked with Lang O'Rourke with the key aim of flexibility and future use of the site in mind. So this is, if you know this development, this type of flexibility and approach is key to its success. It's the most advanced creative and digital hub in Europe. The 3D BIM environment and detailed assessment of the building structure meant the space within the building and the development was maximised, and all of it has been designed for reuse in the future. So those are examples of where we started the circular building in 2017, British Land with significant cost savings from building reuse, and then some more innovative uses of 3D BIM models and modular construction. So yeah, that's it from me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Janet. That's great. Some really interesting information there, and particularly interesting on the use cases that you just talked around there. So just on a couple of things. So I am aware of Here East. I actually worked on the Olympics, probably with most of London, I would have thought. It feels like every time I talk to somebody and say I worked on the Olympics, everybody else has worked there as well. But an amazing building, absolutely fantastic. Okay, I've just got a couple of questions, really, just on some of the information that you just said there. The circular building, and obviously you're the first one that you mentioned around the one that you didn't have on the screen. And you talked about everybody working together. You gave some fantastic statistics. I think you said 43% cost reduction, and obviously the suppliers with the data and things there. What was your biggest challenge when you were kind of doing that first ever building? What was the was it challenge around the data? Can you kind of explain what was obviously we're talking around the kind of data side of things here. What was everybody aligned? It felt like you mentioned as well when we were talking about the committees and talking about digital product passport, and we were talking about obviously sustainability information, hopefully aligning that with the EPDs. So we've got things that we need to think about already for a digital product passport, aligning the EPDs. I know this was in the past and we're not there now, but we've got to learn from them as the kind of like learnings that we found in the past when we started doing these projects on buildings, to think about what do we need to do for the future and for digital product passports. So what was the kind of the biggest challenges that you know that happened when that was being put in place?
Yeah, so I present these case studies and know the teams involved in them, but didn't work on either of those. But I do know from skills work what those were. And so on the project for British Land, in order to reuse components, the storage of them and allocation of space of them in London city centre, as you can imagine, was really kind of a challenge. So firstly, we had to identify the supplier of those facades, and that was where the data part was key. What standard was that facade designed to? And if there had been a handy QR code or a digital product passport linked to that, that would have enabled us to know that quite quickly. So once we'd established that from the drawings, allocation of space for the inspection, because standards might have changed from the original standard, and we had a dedicated site outside of London that had the space to take the facades, and I think it was 30 kilometers maybe from British Land's headquarters, and the cleaning, inspection, testing, etc. happened there. So one thing is just to, once, if you do get the data, just ensuring that you have that space. How much space would you need? Where geographically is the supplier located? In the circular building in London, it was new relationships really. The suppliers for the circular building, some of the materials were reused, and the steel components weren't all the length that we might exactly like because it was reuse. So once we had the suppliers identified, and we had to figure out how big or small the building would be to accommodate those components. So they were the challenges there, but it's a very different relationship, a circular relationship, then so the data that you need is different, and it has to be available to much more actors in the supply chain. Yeah.
So that kind of brings us on to the question of, what are the benefits we're going to think then from a digital product passport? And I think some of those probably we've already touched on, but Amanda, what's the benefits, would you say, of using the digital product passport for manufacturers? I think you mentioned bits before, but maybe just to define that down.
I think one of the things that's key is, I really think it's a journey, right, Rachel, that the industry is on, and Janet, those examples that you provide, they are really exciting and impressive examples. But when I think about the bulk of the industry and manufacturers, I just see that actually there are a lot of challenges for manufacturers and suppliers right now, and that convergence I was talking around between building safety and sustainability is actually quite important. And in some ways, I was sort of wondering 2 or 3 years ago, and I was watching very much and engaged very much in the building safety debate. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, much of my life years ago had been in the sustainability debate. And I sort of was wondering and watching it, when are they going to start to dovetail? Because they've got to start to dovetail. And the funny thing is actually they're dovetailing in this space. They're dovetailing around product information and data management. So I think what the advantages are, Rachel, and what the benefits are, is by engaging with the digital labeling, digital information requirements that are on the horizon, you're sort of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Getting ready and being part of that building safety piece around product information transparency, which is effectively what the government is. If you look at the key recommendations out of the Grenfell inquiry in terms of product information, it's that transparency piece and that effective management piece, and then that has an immediate connection to digital product passports and the circular economy, and being able to play a part in one of those very exciting, interesting projects that that Janet's talking about. But in fact, within the next decade, the expectation is that projects will be doing that. That it won't be just the interesting, exciting examples. And I was looking in the questions, Rachel, and there's a question there about our clients moving towards digital product information. Well, it's really interesting at CCPI because we have what we call demand side supporters. So I'm thinking particularly of Barratt's developments. And Barrett's Development's on one of the demand side supporters of CCPI, and there are many others, Persimmon, Bellway, and then some of the sort of major tier ones, you know, Robert McAlpine and Casem, Mason, Keir, and all of those. Skanska is another. So and they are starting to require their supply chain as demand side supporters of CCPI to come and get your product information assessed. So come and go through this process and be able to get the system and process and behaviors in place to manage product information for building safety. But what's interesting to me is when I've gone along to those supply chain events, and particularly I mentioned Barrett's because I was at one, when actually half the event was about product information, about product manufacturers providing product information which related to the circular economy and carbon net zero and carbon management. So are clients starting to do this? Are they moving towards this? And does that sit within the benefits? I think there are dual benefits here. One is the convergence. At where product information is the convergence between some of the sustainability and carbon agenda and also the building safety agenda that I've been wondering, well, when's it going to come? How's it going to come together? And here it is. And the second one is, are we starting to see products require either one or both? Yes, we are in product information. So I think there are two really clear benefits with it. And I think all of the uncertainty around who will have to do what over time and how the information is going to get delivered to the registry and things, that will straighten itself out. But there isn't any question that the convergence of the conversation is around product information and data management and getting that right, so that actually you could play a part in the sort of thing that Janet was just talking about, which I think many companies simply couldn't at this moment.
Janet, what's your thoughts on that? That was a lot of information and I love it because it all ties together. I think just quickly before you say something, Janet, my point from your whole kind of conversation earlier was around, you were saying the struggle was that you needed to identify your suppliers. So, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. To me, that says it all. It's about identification of the suppliers and of the products. So, is this going to help?
Absolutely. So, I suppose preparation at this point is key, as Amanda mentioned, and the CCPI framework is a mechanism for doing that. And so while there's a little uncertainty in the EU anyway around what form the digital product passport might take, we do know the cohorts of products that will be coming in, and it's quite soon. Iron and steel in 2026, aluminium in 2027, horizontal requirements for repairability and recyclability in 27 and 29. So starting to gather, this is coming. So for products in affected by the EU, and so preparing is prudent, and being a forerunner and understanding the data from your supply chain. And is your steel coming from Australia? Is your, are your granite pavers coming from China? And then what is the carbon implication of that? And how does your product look beside the other products in the industry? And so 2027 will be perhaps too late to be figuring this out. So frameworks like the CCPI now provide you with a means of preparation, which is wonderful, and that golden thread of data that was mentioned after Grenfell has both the safety benefit, as Amanda mentioned, and the benefit of keeping the value of your asset and avoiding asset stranding, so that your building has value into the future, and your bridge, because you know where that component came from. Should it need to be repaired? Should a piece need to be 3D printed perhaps? Or should you need to purchase a small component to avoid replacing 3 or 4 million euros worth of an asset? So I think there's a financial benefit, as Amanda said, and a safety benefit. But it's all about preparation now. It's about not getting left behind, I think.
Janet, I'm really, if I just add on that, Rachel, I'm really interested in that. You know, Janet, I was on the page that it was 2028 that they were asking for, that the first one was to be delivered. Your numbers there is 2026. Didn't realise it was that soon.
So the working plan from last month has some years in it.
Yeah.
For some product categories, but they're only selected.
Yeah.
And under the battery legislation, there'll be some batteries will need DPPs from 2027, I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, iron and steel could be 2026. But it's such an agile, we have to do a full policy review on this for some clients every month and other clients every 3 months, because it's such an agile space. It's one to watch.
I'm interested in that. That's kind of what was coming out for me, Rachel, because I mean, we've been watching it and hadn't picked up the change there. So that's really interesting.
And I think that kind of leads into one of the questions that we've got on our Q&A, just around the kind of circular economy and the capacity in contract specification. You know, our clients now, and maybe Janet, this one's for you really, but are clients actually kind of demanding that or putting that into their kind of frameworks? Is that something that you are aware of, or what are we kind of hearing?
There's a lot of change happening simultaneously in construction. So the BIM requirements for projects with each project become clearer and more explicitly requested. And then in addition, data on carbon is being requested.
Yeah.
And then in some cases where there's robust data can be used in procurement. So 100% there's requests for data, particularly around carbon. But and over time it's increasing, but the supply chain and stakeholder maturity, I suppose awareness is important for us as we procure, just to make sure that every actor in our supply chain is empowered to know what they need to provide, and you know, given time to change with the changing policy that's coming out, because the ESPR working plan came out last month for the next 5 years.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm sure people will want to go away and take more information about that, especially if it's just recently come out, and then we can have more information around that. I mean, this is the role of nima, you know, supporting the built and digital environment, looking at that data management structure, here to help support. So, I mean, I think it's still a minefield at the moment, and that's why projects are coming into place to make sure that we can support that. So, just leading into then to so one thing that I picked up on, and this is something, Amanda, that you mentioned earlier on, around skilling up. And I think that this is a really key element of something that we're talking around here. You know, do we actually have the skills? Are people actually equipped to be able to support with the digital product passport moving forward? What's your thoughts on that, Janet?
No, I don't think we have. I don't think we have the skills, and I think you've got to think about it in relation, particularly to the construction product manufacturer marketplace. If you look at the different figures out there, the size of the marketplace is that we have somewhere around, depending on whose figures you're looking at, 26,000 manufacturers, and there are about 19,000 of them that are SMEs, you know, that are micro businesses or small businesses or small medium-sized businesses. And then at the other end, there are about 300 that are the very large. And then you can sort of fill in the middle with medium and large size of, a handful of thousands. And the difficulty is if you're an SME, this is a lot to take on. and cope with. And if you're a very large organisation, we see at CCPI, some of the early adopters of CCPI have come, and they've got some very impressive system and process in place. All singing and dancing sort of digital PIMS. But I'm not sure that even those are all necessarily using unique identification in the way that they could be. I something that we try to do through CCPI in a gentle and understanding way, I think is probably the best way to express it, is we actually want to see, ideally, the marketplace and the players in the marketplace increasingly digitized and working with QR codes, with unique identifiers, in order that actually, when it comes to product information management, when it comes to traceability, that can really support that and help with that. But we are doing it slowly and calibrating it over time, partially because what we see in working with manufacturers and is that actually even just getting themselves organized with the right behaviors and system and process in place for product information management and being confident in that, before you start getting into sort of data management and data parcels and tracing, before getting ready for all of that, there's actually a fair amount of work to do. I think it's a big ask of the industry, and the unfortunate aspect of that is it shouldn't be. And the quicker we can get adoption and engagement, the better. But I've spent years of my life on transformational programs in industry. Janet, you will have done the same in Arab. And what I know is it does take time, and you're trying to move a lot of organisations in a direction when at this moment investment is very hard for companies, because actually construction has had all of its own challenges, economic challenges and things. And this conversation doesn't work in isolation from that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Janet, is there anything else you want to add on that?
I think you may be right on your dates, Amanda. On iron and steel, the rules will be fixed in 2026, but it's not entirely clear if the minute the rules are set. So I think we're both saying similar things.
Be worried. I was thinking first they want the first digital product passport in place in 2026. Crikey, we were on 2028, and that doesn't feel like a lot of time for the challenge that we've just talked about, Rachel.
Yeah. The rules will be set for iron and steel in 2026. The rules will be set for aluminium in 2027. But really the time to prepare is Amanda was saying, is now. So where is the product coming from? As I said, what's the carbon associated with it? How reliable is that data? And can you access it when you will need to in the coming years?
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to pass over that we've got a couple of questions still we haven't had a chance to go to yet. So we've got a question here. Has it been discussed on how the digital product passport could be connected or integrated to other technologies so that it facilitates its implementation or makes it more effective?
Which one of us do you want on that?
So Janet, did you want to just answer that one?
Well, it would make it more effective. Could you just say the beginning of it again, if that's okay?
Yeah, no, of course. Is it being discussed on how digital product passports could be connected or integrated to other technologies so that it facilitates its implementation or makes it more effective?
Absolutely. And so at the moment, there's a consultation out by the EU for the platform on which the digital product passports would be available. And I think once this consultation is completed, there'll be a lot more certainty around the interoperability. At the moment, this type of data, where it is collected for the built environment, can be collected by adding attributes, for example, to your BIM. If you're putting together your asset information requirements or your product information requirements, those attributes, you can add in, as you wish, information about design for disassembly, recycled content, etc. And through those mechanisms, you can ensure that that data is accessible and there's interoperability there. There'll be a lot as the year plays out, as Amanda was saying. It'll become a lot clearer what format the DPP platform will take in Europe, and that will talk then more to the interoperability. But construction products regulation, digital product passports, will have to align with the eco design regulation, digital product passports, and that's set out in the legislation, so that's imperative.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point that you just mentioned there, Janet. Obviously, the digital product passport sits under both regulations, so the SPR and also the construction product regulation, so not to be confused, and there will be different aspects to that, but the digital product passport will align for both regulations. So one other quick question, I'm just conscious we have about 5 minutes left here. So they're saying here, will there be an overlap with the digital product passport unique identifiers with COBie or unique classifications? At the moment, Scott, I don't believe we've got the full answer to that. Janet, is there anything else you want to add on to that?
I'm not a specialist in that area, so unless Amanda, that wouldn't be my area, yeah.
So, I mean, so Scott, just from a JS1 perspective, obviously a unique identifier, I would imagine that it needs to sit across all, needs to be interoperable and needs to be global, and it needs to be able to potentially be a standard. So I sit within JS1 standards. We would expect to have that overlap between unique classifications and COBie, and it can happen. So the answer is it going to happen? We don't know at this moment in time. Can it happen? Yes, it can. So hopefully that answers your question there. Okay, is there any other questions coming into the chat at the moment? No? Okay, well, I think we'll start to close off the session. We've got a couple of minutes left. So if I could just get a last sentence from the both of you, Janet, first, if you could just give me what do we need to do? What do we really need to be saying at the very end of this webinar? What's the message that one thing you want to get across to people right now?
I think that what the assets that we have, we can attach value to them with the data, with the unique identifiers. So one step we can take to be sustainable is to start to prepare now for digital product passports, and then to ensure that as that asset is handed on, that the data goes with it.
Thank you. Amanda?
Very simple and predictable from me. Get involved with CCPI. You need to get prepared for this. We are here to help you. It is not a test to fail. It's a framework and system to help you get organised for this as manufacturers. It's fantastic that nima is doing a session like this. It's fantastic to sit beside Rachel and Janet to talk about this. The problem is everyone has got so much on their desks at the moment, so many things to worry about. This could really bite people. And just not see it coming. You mentioned, Rachel, there's a question in the consultation on the green paper about digital labelling. I think that there are a lot of manufacturers who've got so much else to worry about, they're not actually aware that this is coming. It's important. If you want to trade in Europe, you're going to need to do it. And preparedness is the only way to be in the place that you need at the right time. And the timing is moving all of the time, as Janet has illustrated for us. So thanks for giving us the chance to talk about it. Come and register and talk with us.
Yeah, no, great. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. I think the key message is, data is absolutely at the fundamental point of all of this. We need all manufacturers to start to prepare. they've not got all that data all in a line, then it needs to happen. There's means and ways of being able to do that. There's processes around that. NEMA's here to help support that, obviously alongside CCPI as a potential tool to be able to support with that as well. And then that obviously ties into really that circularity economy of what Arup is trying to do here today as well. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you for your expertise and knowledge. Thanks a lot.
All the best. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye now.